In the last video, we were just talking about some of the the flow of how things began to grow and develop in our country. And one of the first things, and the reason why I mentioned the Bessemer process, is one of the first things that really allowed kind of like this circular motion is factories here, resources out here. How do you efficiently and cheaply move these resources to your factories? And one of the most effective ways, safest ways, was through railroad lines. And so by 1869, we're right after the Civil War, started Reconstruction, a lot of tensions, a lot of difficulty. By 1869, there were about 30,000 miles of track. In 40 short years, we're to 200,000 miles of track. So all of a sudden, these new railroad lines, if you have cattle ranches in Texas, well, you slaughter that cattle or you ship those cattle by train up here to Chicago to the stockyards. From there, the train will allow you to ship that meat and that supply all over the East Coast. And so railroads, now the reason why the railroads could be expanded so readily, part of it was a lot of cheap labor coming into the United States to work those lines, government incentives, the government saying, railroads, if you build those tracks, we will give you the land on which you build those tracks. So railroads were getting free land, and then, I forgot what I was going to say. The resources flowing through there. Oh, the Bessemer process. And so here, you know, they're laying down the railroad tracks, and they're made of iron. And now you have these inventions on how to make steel cheaper and better. And so now they're starting to use this with the railroads, which allows the railroads to expand. So an invention really influences and can dictate the expansion of the railroads, which impacts the industry and the resources and the whole flow. So there are many things that influence what was happening in the country. Besides the growth and just the huge population, to deal with moving west, there were new things invented. So the Bessemer process, the idea of being able to create better steel. You have a sewing machine. Now that may sound a little silly, but if it takes you, before there was a sewing machine, everything, literally, each stitch was sewn by hand. Well, you have a boom in the population, you have people needing more clothes. Here's a faster, more efficient way, in some ways a better way, a more consistent way to make clothes than you ever had before. So now you can supply this new population with the clothes they need cheaper. Dynamite. How do we get the railroad through the Rockies? Oh, unless, you know, you can't move a whole 13,000-foot mountain, so you have to go through it. So how do you do that? The invention of dynamite and be able to explode, move the rock, and lay the track. The typewriter in terms of communication. The whole idea of Levi blue jeans. When people were going out there and they were mining and they were working on these homesteads, they needed very thick, durable clothes. So, because of that huge influx, the new clothes are invented. We live in our blue jeans. They're an essential part of most people's clothes, not just here in the United States, but around the world. Now, the telephone. The whole idea with Alexander Graham Bell, which is a step up from the telegraph. The idea of spreading information. We live now on the internet in an instant communication age. Anything happens and you see it from somebody's cell phone. And here, communication back and forth. If there is a problem with getting a resource in the West. Let's say an avalanche cuts off the railroad line temporarily, well then you can pick up a phone and contact your supplier back east and say, this is the situation. The whole idea of the phonograph, the light bulb, and the cash register, where you're not adding by hand, that now you have a machine to do it. Much more efficient, fewer mistakes. The light bulb, the idea of not having to use oil, not having to use wax and candles, all these things have made a huge impact. Gasoline in the automobile, skyscraper, directly due to from the creation of steel being stronger and better. Radio, subway, x-ray, all these governments, all these inventions had to be issued patents. And you can see in those 100 years, 500,000 patents. A patent means this is a new idea. This is a new invention. You need to claim your legal right to it. So the idea through here is people began to move out west. There were different needs. People began to be creative and say, we can create this, we can do that. One of the first ones was Thomas Alva Edison. He was called the Wizard of Menlo Park. He invented so many things that we still use today. And we will continue to talk about Edison in our next video.